Hello, welcome to the October 4th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm just going to do a quick audio test to make sure everything is coming through, and then we will go ahead and get started. Bear with me just for a moment. All right, sounds like my monitoring computer is coming on fine. My name is Greg Unda. I'll be the host for the live stream. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America in the United States. And I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'll be the host for the live stream today. And I'm broadcasting from Alexandria, Virginia. If you're watching live, please feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. For those that have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de, or simply type your question in the chat field. Often when asking questions, if you could specify which level of Cubase that you're running and which version. So you can say I'm running Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist Pro, version 10, version 11, version 12, and which operating system. That information will be helpful. Several hours after the live stream ends, we will have all of the topics covered in the live stream pinned with timestamps to the top of the comments field. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, and we've covered over 21,000 questions, you could go to cubaseindex.com. We want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that site. So it's a wonderful resource. Another wonderful resource of information is the Cubase Nation Discord, and Jazz Dude does a lot of work with that. So I want to give special thanks to Jazz Dude for that. Also, we have two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better community. So I'm going to give special thanks to them. When asking questions, my ability to answer questions in real time will soon be eclipsed. So if we could try to avoid asking the same questions repeatedly, that would just kind of speed up the entire process for me, and we'll get through more questions faster. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. So I saw a question and I copied it over and it disappeared from the chat field. But first question is, hi Greg, just a quick question. I pitch edit the audio with Melodyne inside Cubase and bounce that event/track. Will the edited information be there permanently in the bounced file? So yes, it will be there permanently in the bounced file. Or if you want to, another way of doing it is just to, once you have the ARA2 extension, is to bounce a selection. Another method is to just, as soon as I come over here, let's say I wanted to do this at Spectral Layers. So now I will just double click this particular file. We could go into our ARA2 extension, and if we wanted to just click right here, we could see make track extension permanent. So that's another way of being able to do it as well. But you could also just bounce the selection as well. All right, let me get to the live chat questions here. Yeah, sometimes if you ask questions like beforehand, they don't necessarily come out in the chat, so there's some cutoff. All right, so we have a question from Uno Memento from Finland. It's great to have you on the Zoom social on Friday. And it says, my friend sent me a mono audio track where he plays guitar and sings. The tempo is not precise. Now you should play drums to the song. How do I get the original track to the exact tempo? So if you had to do this, we could kind of do two ways. One is to take the performance and match it to the existing track, or take the performance with various fluctuations in tempo and make those fluctuations go away. So let's come over here. I'll just show you how to do this quickly. So we'll just say, I'll just take this particular piece here, and we'll say that we're not going to hear any correlation between the click track and what's going on. So what I'm going to do is to select the file. I will go to my project menu, and let's go to tempo detection, and let's say analyze. and we'll listen to it now. All right, so let's say at this point we're happy, and you may have to tweak a couple little things, but for the most part, you should be in good shape there. So we see that every beat here is going to fluctuate slightly. And if we wanted that to actually be steady and consistent, I just select the recording, go to your audio menu, and we'll go to advanced, and we'll say set definition from tempo. So at this point, we could save it, embed it into the audio file or into the project. So once we've done that, and we could do that for multiple tracks or a single track, I could just come to my tempo, and let's say it's roughly maybe 144. I could bypass the particular tempo track and just kind of type in a steady tempo. Now everything is playing back at a perfectly steady tempo. Or if I wanted to follow the original tempo, but if I just click here, we type in kind of our non-changing tempo factor. You just say 144, and then you could play back the audio at a steady tempo and record your drums perfectly in time if you wanted to. All right. All right, so we see John Costigan, we see Jazz Dude. All right. We have Filter Freak, and he's saying only 3 days till Friday, so that's good. Good optimism there. All right, and my chat seems stuck, so let me just see if I could. Okay, now I think it's wakened up now. All right. All right, so let's read through. All right, so we see Soren from Sweden. We see Filter Freak. We have Benny checking in from Sweden as well. Great to see you. We have Best Korean Jesus. So Best Korean Jesus asks, Dear Greg, how to create and save Step Designer presets? So let me just come over. All right, so say I have okay, so sorry, my controller is not behaving. Let me just see if I can unplug my MIDI controller here. Okay, so let's come over here. Let's say I have a synth bass part. And now what I want to do is to create a MIDI insert. So and let's go to our step designer. Okay, so let's say I have, I'll just solo this part. So let's say at this point, we have just a little pattern. So here we could choose, I'm just going to have this automatically do velocity control. And at this point, if I wanted to save it as a preset, let's see if I... So we'll say just right here, save changes as preset. And then we'll give it a name. So now when we come over here, we could just say, I want to go to this pattern. And we'll go call this preset BKJ. So once again, just kind of come here and then you'll see save changes as preset. And that should do the trick. All right, so we see Jan from Stockholm. We see Dallas LaRue. Okay, so it says, I bought a Samsung hard drive for backup. This question, I bought a Samsung hard drive for backup, but when I save a song on it from Cubase 12, the hard drive always opens it in Cubase 10. So it's going to be just basically a file association. So it's not necessarily outside of Cubase, but let's say if I wanted to, and this will kind of work similarly on either operating system. So say if I wanted to go to my documents, so at this point we could just say, take this and just right click, and then you could just say open with whatever version of Cubase that you're in. You could also, if you have Cubase 12 open, at that point you could just open it directly from there, but just change kind of the file association so that that CPR file will load into Cubase 12 versus Cubase 10. So it's kind of done at the operating system level. All right, wonderful to see Rick Ballantyne. Wonderful composer. Just wishing everyone happy fall here for the tips today. Glad you could join us. And Rick is in Charlotte, North Carolina area. So we have a question. Any news for the new Cubase version? So, Cubase has just been out for like 6 or 7 months. So it's a little early for a new version. So they usually have, minimum a year life cycle. So nothing really to share on new Cubase versions. All right, and we have James Bastani checking in from Beverly Hills. Thanks for joining us. Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. All right, wonderful to see Agent K and Jazz Dude on. Michael Pierce from outside London, and we have okay, so we have a question from Ed Visinor. Simple question. Can you show how to add several tracks into one bus to control audio? Okay, so let's say I wanted to add, I want to take these 8 tracks here and assign them to a bus or like a group track. So really all I'd have to do is I have these selected, right click, you'll see add track, and then you could add group channel to the selected track. So we'll just call this Ed. And now this particular group channel is going to be summing the output of all those particular channels. And if we wanted to do this also for adding an effect send or a VCA fader to the selected channels, we could do kind of that same exact principle. So select the tracks, right click, and from the add track menu, group channel to selected channels, or FX channel or VCA fader to selected channels. All right. So I just see a question. Shortcut for apply plugin in each track. So if you wanted to take a number of tracks and put this same plugin on, so let's say I wanted to come here, you can hold down Alt or Option plus Shift and just say, okay, I want this to, be a coursing plugin on the inserts for all these tracks. So I could just come right here And now the selected tracks, we can just assign holding down Q-Link or Alt or Option plus Shift, and then you could assign it accordingly, just like that. But let me know if it's a different method that you want to do to apply, that you wanted to apply for that. Okay, so we see, all right, Matt Elston joining from London. Thanks for being here. So we see a question from Samuel Saria. How use the kick or something in loop is for Groove Agent. So if we have a drum loop, all right, so say I just have this particular drum loop. Let me just find something a little. All right, so say I want to take this drum loop and I'm just going to add a new instrument track. So let's say Groove Agent. And if I add the correct instrument this time, that would help. Sorry, my error. All right, and at this point, I could just drag and drop the loop. So let's say I just wanted to play this. So at this point, if we wanted to extract just the like the kick, we could say slice. Go to the slice tab. So go on the instrument. You have instrument or pattern pads. Go to the instrument pads, go to edit, select slice, and create slices. And now you could isolate the kick from, and as we wanted to do this, this will create a pattern pad. So if we go to our pattern pad here, I could just drag this out. So when we, so if we wanted to, so each of the notes here would just trigger the slice. So if you wanted to do stuff like that and be able to isolate the different sounds from a loop, so that's how you could use the kick or something from a loop. But let me know if you wanted to do something else, Samuel. All right. My chat field jumped. All right, so you see from Michael Pierce, how do you change the scale of the loudness meter in the right-hand window? Mine bottoms out at -23 and tops out at -14, but doesn't shift if I change the reference to something like -13. Okay, so let's say we go to our meter and to our loudness meter. And then if we go to our settings here, so I'll just play back a different project here, or I guess we'd be okay. But you should be able to set the kind of the integrated loudness here. So let's say if I wanted to set this to -12, that you could see kind of the meter scale here. So maybe if you just change the integrated, that you should see that scale reflected. So at this point, if I change the integrated to -6 LUFS, that we could see that we could have the scale just kind of change here. So try just, changing the reference level for like integrated here. And let me know if that works. All right, so we have a question from Soren. It says, hi, Greg. I have an Intel i9 8 cores. We're in Spectral layers and is about to unmix stems and pressed preview. I was told I have 2 week computer for preview to drums. Okay, can you do it? So I don't think, like the preview for unmixing, I don't think that there's, I know it gives you the option for preview, but that's obviously a very time consuming process in doing it unmixed. So I don't think that I could do it on my system. So let's just say, if I wanted to take, I'll just import an audio file. So don't feel bad if the preview for the spectral layers, like down mixing, doesn't work. It's obviously kind of a bit of a, something that's probably too fast for doing previewing on, but I'll just show it just so you could see it as well. And for the benefit of others that want to see this. So let me just turn this down to kill. Sorry. All right, so now if I wanted to do kind of my spectral layers here, so this is probably one where they should remove probably the real-time preview. So if we say, okay, let's unmix stems, all right, and we get kind of the preview, so at this point, so you could see, so yeah, like if you wanted to do this, you would have to kind of do it. I wouldn't anticipated doing it as a real-time preview, that it would do it offline. So a lot of the spectral editing functions, you could do preview, which is super helpful for being able to dial in stuff fast. But for the unmixing of stems, I haven't seen, I think the computers, maybe there's a computer that could do it, but I haven't seen it yet. And I have, a fairly new M1 processor, and I have an i9 with 12 cores, and I haven't really seen it work in real-time preview. All right, so we just see question. Hey, what is the easiest way to align an acapella to the tempo? All right, so let's do new project here. So a lot of times if you know what the tempo is, let's say I'll just take some vocal files here. Okay, and I'll just make a new audio file from this. So when you know what kind of the origin tempo is of the file, so let me just, so when we go to look at, we can see that these are at 108 BPM. So at this point, I will just make a new file here. So we'll bounce selection. All right, and at this point, I'm going to go into the pool window and make sure that we have the right tempo. All right, so we want to make sure that we have the correct origin tempo from the particular file. And then once you have that, So let's say if I place back, I want to select a file and make sure that it's in musical mode. And then whatever tempo that I just kind of drop it. So let's say I'll type in 160. So it's going to be faster. But if I want it to be like 96. So at this point, everything will just kind of play back. But again, if I want to double the tempo to say 192. So once you have the original tempo of the file, you could just simply make sure that that tempo value is assigned in the audio pool, and you could place it into musical mode directly there as well. And then once you have kind of the origin tempo, once it's in musical mode, it'll then just kind of follow the particular tempo changes from the tempo track. Okay, so we see a question, is there a way to import my preferences from Elements 11 to Artist 12? So I'm not sure if the Elements version, if you come over here, you could say, so, you know, you could probably all of your preferences that once you come over here, you could save your preferences file. So let's come over here and just so we'll say save. Okay. So one way to do it, you know, so I saved my preferences there, but let's say I wanted to go to the edit menu, check to see if you have an actual option for your profile manager, and then you could export the profile. So I took my, you know, for my previous MacBook, I took those particular files and imported it here. So you could export it in your Elements 11 and then import it into your artist version, Artist 12. And if you wanted to manually do it on the Mac platform, we could come over to the library, and it'll be in similar the same spots. And I'll show you how to do this on a Windows platform. So let's go to the library, and then we want to go to, on the Mac platform, to preferences, and then you'll see Cubase 12. Here we should see presets, and I think we will see maybe see where the preferences go. Let me just take a look, see if it goes into. Might go into application support on Mac. me just take a look, another look. It might be in the defaults XML file as well. Let's just see if there's... And it might be in the RAM presets file here. I think that's where it may go to. So you could copy that over. Sorry, it took me a while to get there. But let's say if you're on a Windows platform, to access it, we could just come to, let's... Just go to your start menu and go to your all programs, go to Steinberg Cubase 12 and go into the user settings data folder, and that's where the files will be. So give that a shot. And if you can't find it still, I could take a look afterwards. But, first thing I would do is just to export, see if you have the profile manager and export your profile and then import that into the new version. All right, so we have a question. Is there any similar function to retrospective recording, but for audio? I know it's much more data, but is there a way to set something even just to record the last few minutes? Thanks. So I think we could do up to a minute. And if you go to your preferences here and go to record to audio, and here we could say your audio pre-record seconds. So it's not going to be a couple of minutes, but we could do up to 1 minute. And basically what this would allow us to do is, let's say I record directly onto this, and we're starting at measure 16. So once I've done a recording, we could choose to kind of roll it back a second. So whatever value you have set here for this, but let's say we want to do preferences, record audio. You'll see the audio pre-record seconds. I think you could do up to 60 seconds. And at that point, you could just simply roll back and have whatever audio was captured in that buffer. All right, so we see Nick from a toothache Essex, UK. We hope you're doing well. All right, so we see from Endred, what's up, Greg? What's the easiest way to get the metronome in my headphones alone using Scarlett 2i4? So if we come to the control room, so, if you don't want the click track to show up in the, if you wanted to so this would enable the click track here. And if you have 2i4s, I assume that's 4 outputs. So you could have like outputs 3 and 4. If we go to your audio connections, we'll have outputs under control room, and we could add like a bus. So we could just come over, right click, and I have all of my cues. And then in the cues, I could turn off the click track here. And then let's say we wanted outputs 3 and 4. And we could set up, and this is contingent upon, this could matter if the Focusrite interface allows you to take outputs 3 and 4, route it to headphones. But if it's going out to a separate bus, at this point, you could just say the headphones have the click track, but not in the main speaker. So if I don't want to hear the click track in the speakers, but just want to hear it in the headphones, we could do that. A lot of times, many interfaces may take the stereo out and mimic the headphone output to the main stereo output. And if that's the case, you can't really decouple it just based upon how the audio interface is set up. But if you could assign, if we go to the audio connections and go to the control room and assign, add a actual cue mix, then the cue mix, and we set this to go out of like outputs 3 and 4 of your audio interface, then that cue you could have independent click for the headphones. It doesn't happen in the control room. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas on. And he wants people to whack the like button. So if you do learn a tip or trick, make sure you do hit the like button. All right, so you just see a question. How to record a full performance using external synths with pre-made MIDI events in Cubase if there's only one timeline. Using arrangement events jumps to block A, B, and C, moves to timeline. Okay, and this is from Pedro. So, okay, so when you say record a full performance using external synths with pre-made MIDI events in Cubase if there's only one timeline. So, if you have, like, I guess the internal sequencers of those particular, external instruments, I'm not sure why, one timeline would be problematic. But if you go to the transport and let's say we go to the project synchronization setup, what you could say is for each of your instruments. So if it's an instrument that has its own sequencer, you could place that sequencer. You could place that external instrument to listen to MIDI clock. And at this point, you could just send your MIDI ports to those particular instruments, and this would send MIDI clock out. So that when you hit play in Cubase, that the other instruments, and once we do that, you want to make sure that you have on a transport, external sync activated. But then when you hit play in Cubase, that will sync up all your external synths. And I just see you said using arrangement events jumps to block A, B, and C, moves the timeline. So, but, then place Cubase and record. And then, you should be able to capture all the data. It's commonly done for transferring drums from a drum machine. Just sync it up via MIDI clock. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. All right, we see Michael Teams is already on fire delivering virtual ice cream to people. All right, so the Heartbreak Time Machine just saying greetings from Sacramento, California. All right, and we see Captenergy Music from Pennsylvania. We have Alexander Plasko, thanks for being on. My chat field just jumped. All right, we have a for mixing tips. Just says simple question: how to add a tempo automation track. So really, all you have to do is add a tempo track. So if you just want it to come right over here. So if you have tempo information, we could just right-click and add a tempo track. And I think this is in Artist and Pro. If you have like Cubase AI or Elements, we could go into the tempo editor. So I think if we just, I think it's like Shift T, we get the keyboard shortcut, Control or Command plus the letter T. So in this way, we could draw in different tempo events here like that on kind of the lighter versions. But if you want to see tempo events on the main timeline, so it doesn't show up as, as automation in a MIDI or audio event, but it would be its own track classification. So just say add track, add tempo track. Okay, so we see from Julian just says, hello, just discovered that there's a transpose track. How do you use it? Thanks for these streams. All right, so let's go ahead and show you how to use the transpose track. Okay, so let's say I'm just going to add a transpose track. So we're going to add, and we'll say transpose. All right, and let's just go take this particular project. So, and the day we first met, that was a long time ago. All right, so say that's, so I'm gonna just click here with my pencil tool, and if I'm on the, I'll just move my transpose track up here. So we'll get kind of our home key here. So I'm going to click here with the pencil tool. And what I want to do now is just get this on the grid. Sorry about that. So, and then we see 0. So this means there's no transposition. So I'm going to click into value in the bottom left-hand corner and hit 2. So as we listen to this, do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago. In the 7th grade in the school parking lot. Now let's say, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me. So now I could just come right over here and say, okay, right here, I wanted to transpose down -2 semitones. So this will take all my MIDI and my audio. And we'll go back to our home key. Let's say right over here. In our first kiss, there was no regret. Right after that Garth Brooks show, you told her daddy and you called my mom. Said you were too damn good for any boy that dumb. His sour words are now dead. So say -4. So that's really kind of all you have to do is just kind of click with the pencil tool where you want it to transpose. And then that will kind of handle the transpositions for you. It's a fun feature. All right, so we have Luca checking in from Munich. All right, thanks for joining us. Great to see you on the Zoom meetup on Friday. All right, so we had a question from Nicholas Carlson. Hi, Greg. I wonder if it's possible to extend or shorten vocal phrases. I'm working on a project, and the vocals are okay, but in some place the phrasing is a bit off, so I wonder if it could be done. So yeah, you could do this just using like Audio Warp, and with version 12, we could just do this right on the main project window. So let's say we wanted to, I'm going to switch to the warp tool, and with the warp tool, there's a free warp mode. So let's say I just wanted to kind of change some of the rhythmic phrasing of the words. So I'm going to just come here. Well, even now, I'm so in love with you. So we could just kind of place in different warp markers. So, and there's also a couple, some other ways. So we want to switch this to free warp. And then we see like this little white line. I'll just change a color on this so it's a little more easier to see. So we see this white line. This will allow me to place kind of warp markers. Now, depending on your file, you may have hit points already. So if I wanted to just kind of take hit points and turn these into warp markers, we could double click and let's just say, okay, I'm going to go to edit my hit points. All right. And then I'm going to say create warp markers. So you'll see this little create tab. So now when we kind of zoom in and I'm in the warp markers can be added. So I could just say, let's just have this come in earlier. Well, even now, I'm so in love with you. And let's say where the word with, I want to be stretched out here. Well, even now, I'm so in love with you. Just like along. And then we could actually kind of snap these to the grid if we wanted to. So if I just say, okay, let's just put these and if you put these in manually, just kind of make sure that you have, kind of like an anchor point afterwards, because if there isn't an anchor point, what can happen is as we move this note, like everything after it can move. So we could just say, okay, I just want to take this particular phrase and just change kind of the rhythmic values of it. So in love with you, just like so say, okay, I just want that to be a little later. So, and just being able to take, I'll just listen to it as some background. Just like a long and say, okay, I want this phrase to start here. So just do kind of free warping. You. Just like a long. And I want that long to actually just come earlier. So you'll see where the warp marker will turn white. And then I can now just like long time ago. So you can say, okay, I want this to be stretched out. So just kind of click and you could add warp markers manually. So play around with the free warp, and I think that would do exactly what you want to do. Okay, so we see a question. What's the process of getting Cubasis to Cubase? I'm going to iPad for mainly recording and light premix. So, there's a Cubasis project importer. So all you have to do is go, once you install the little utility, you'll come here to import, and you'll say import Cubasis project. So just install that and then select import Cubasis project, and that will automatically take your Cubase project in. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. How come sometimes I lose my controller mapping that I made myself for Novation Impulse as I start a new project? Thanks. It could be, just make sure that you have, so sometimes what happens with like the MIDI remotes If they're lost for some reason, it could be that their particular MIDI ports are maybe assigned somewhere else. And this could be like when we go to like a generic remote or Mackie remote, make sure like when you're starting a particular project that it's not that you don't have the same MIDI ports that you're using for the MIDI remote already allocated in another kind of remote control mode. So if it's Mackie control or generic remote, so make sure that it isn't being kind of used twice, because that could have it lose communication when starting a new project if something, another part of the program is already taking control of that MIDI port. All right, wonderful to see Jeff Zabelski from Chico, California on. All right, so we see Soren can calm down about the spectral layers message. So, all right, well, great to see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. All right, so we see, can you show how to take a sample wave form and create MIDI note? So, there's a couple ways of, if you wanted to, convert it into MIDI. So, what you could do is if we're here in our Very Audio editor, so let's say I'll activate my Very Audio so I could, so if I wanted to take a performance of audio and turn that into MIDI, within the Very Audio editor, so we just come here, we'll see functions, and then we have an extract MIDI. If you wanted to take a sound and play it from MIDI, at this point, let's say I will come over here. So I think that there's like, so I just have like a note here. So what I could do is create sampler track. And now I could just play the particular note in the MIDI domain. So that would be all I'd have to do is, just play. And so that's two ways of kind of working, taking a sample waveform and create a MIDI note. But let me know if those make sense. All right, so we see a question. What would cause Cubase 12 Pro and Windows 11 Home to freeze after putting my PC to sleep while I take a break? When I wake up, my PC Cubase is frozen. I have to end task and restart. I haven't come across that, but sometimes, not everything wakes up. So it could be MIDI controllers, your audio interface maybe doesn't wake up in the order that Cubase is seeing. Sometimes some plugins will kind of, not wake up as well. So there's a lot of different things. So see if you get the same result, taking out different variables such as plugins on a project. So sometimes those plugins won't automatically recall after the program is woken up. All right, so we see a question from John Costigan. Is Flux no longer supported in Cubase 12? I think it is. So let's go take a look. I think it just works inside of Halion Sonic SE. So let me just take a look, or one of the Halion families. So we'll just. So there's Flux. So yeah. No problem there. And if you wanted to come here. So make sure that you're opening it inside of Halion Sonic SE. So I don't think it runs as a standalone instrument that you'll see listed here. But so when we say, let's go to media, I'll go home. So let's say we go to VST instruments. We look at Halion Sonic SE. And then you could see flux and all the different flux presets there. So should have it functioning. All right, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. I can't find the Verve through the instruments with Halion 5. Well, it works fine with Halion Sonic SE3. How can I fix that? So I think that there's some special things in Verve that need to be running in at least like Halion 6, like the latest versions of Halion, because there were some updates to make some of the functionality for Verve work with the Halion Sonic SE3. So Halion 5 is the previous generation, and the current version is Halion 6. So I think if you update it to Halion 6, that you should be in good shape. All right, reading through copies here. All right, so we see PZ136 on. Thanks for joining us. So I see, hi Greg, I've been busy, finally upgraded Cubase 12 2 days ago, but didn't get any of the freebies with it yet. So can we still get those post Cubase 12 sale? So check in your, there may be, I haven't checked, but check in your MySteinberg account. So if you go to steinberg.net and go to your MySteinberg account and take a look at your account information, you should see vouchers. And I think you might still be able to get them. I'm not sure if they needed to be downloaded, but you could check in your vouchers and see if they're still available. All right, so we have Michael Pierce just saying, in audio connections window, I have I/O presets in Cubase 11. They weren't transferred to Cubase 12, and I couldn't find them in the library folder in presets. Am I blind? Where might they be? It could be under RAM presets, but I know that if you had I/O presets that were created in one version to another, that you could export those as a profile. So again, if we go to edit to your profile manager, all of your I/O setup information will just automatically be carried over within the profile as well. Right, reading through different comments. Thanks for all the great questions. Okay, so we see from PZ136 that the 2i2 has separate audio/headphone routing, so that's great. John Koskian is saying we really like likes. So, all right. So we have Madge Deepers checking in from an autumnal UK. Yeah. So we had kind of remnants of hurricane that hit Florida this week, kind of hitting us. So we had like a 30-degree drop in temperatures here of Fahrenheit degrees. within one day. So I think our cat was very shocked, you know. All right, so you see from Android, thanks, Greg. That helps. Hope you got the email I sent to the company. So I don't think I got that one. If you sent it to the company, I haven't seen it yet or heard a reference of it, but thanks for sending email. All right, sorry, just my chat field jumped on me. All right, so we see, will Cubase ever update the delay compensation to do all external processors at once? Having to do it individually is really a pain. Also, pictures would be nice. So I haven't heard of any plans for it, but, realize that each project and different routing scenarios could add to different delay compensations. So, when you're working with it, so there could be different scenarios, like if you're if you're sending the signal from one to another to another to another in the path, like if you're going out to 3 different analog sources versus 1 versus 7, and they're kind of going in series, that may give you different results. So that's why you kind of need to do it on a case by case basis. All right, so we see Jeff Sabelski is number 50 on hitting the like buttons. That's great. We see from At the Source Studios, is there a way to set delay compensation for multiple? And I don't know about it. No, and realize that, even if you have a project, if you switch sample rates from 44.1 to 48K, that's going to affect your delay compensation as well. So. Okay, so we have a question from Endred. Says, hope I'm not over asking, but since you're a bass player, you might be the perfect person to ask. If I want that classic 70s tube amp funk sound, which amp would you recommend in a bass amp rack? Yeah, I'm always partial to Ampeg. Like I didn't get it at first, and then in 10th grade, I just kind of switched one button, and then it was a total epiphany, and I've been a very loyal Ampeg person. Check out so even their preamps, like I have an Ampeg SCR DI, which I think is great. It also serves as a headphone preamp, but I would gig out with an Ampeg BA115, and then I upgraded to a BA115 version 2. So if I was gigging, that was my amp. I have an old Ampeg V4, but you could also check out, like as far as plugins go, this one sounds really great. If we go to like the VST bass amp and just kind of, I like, my cabinets. I've always played I like 115 cabinets, and but check out Ampeg stuff. It's kind of a cliche for a reason. It's like what Marshall is to classic guitar tones. Ampeg is for guitars. You could think of Ampeg as that for bass. And I was just super happy that they're part of the Yamaha family now. If I waited another couple months, I could have got my Ampeg amp cheaper, but but I'm a huge Ampeg fan. All right, so a question, is there a way to change a track stereo mono after it's created if need be? So not really, they're still kind of treated as separate entities. So, but, and some people want to do that so they could put a stereo effect on a particular track, But, you know, if you just send it to ascend, you could do that quite easily, but there isn't just an automatic on-off like switch for that. All right, so we see from Add to Source Studios, can you please show how to create, adjust hit points, as well as to match, sync a track to another, i.e. for guitar tracks on or multiple vocal takes? Okay. So a lot of times you may not have to actually create hit points. So I'll just show you if you want to do it for like multiple guitar or multiple vocal takes. We'll show you how to do that with the audio alignment capabilities. You can manually warp things around, but you may not need to. So we'll show you here. Okay, so let's say I have like background vocals here.
Somos iguales. Somos iguales.
So really all you have to do is kind of go to the alignment panel. So we could do it directly from here or from audio, and you'll see alignment. So open audio alignment panel. So I'm going to select one as the reference track. And let's say I wanted these tracks to be the targets. So basically we're going to take the timing of this and apply it to all of those tracks and click align audio. And we can see even visually.
Iguales. Somos iguales. Somos iguales.
So where we were.
Somos iguales.
So then.
Somos iguales. Somos iguales.
So once again, you know, go to the audio alignment panel, select what you want as, you know, select the event, go to the reference, and then take the other ones as targets, and then just align them like that. So you don't even have to do hit points. All right, so we just see question. Hi, if I create a group track with a compressor on it and then send a track pre-fader to the group track, how do I adjust the volume on the track? Okay, so you may not have to send it pre-fader or, you know, send it from the particular, you know, using sends. So what I would do is, let's say I want to take all my drums in this particular project here. So I'm going to just select these, and then let's add a group channel to the selected. So, and instead of using the sends, it just takes these drum tracks and sends it to the group on the output here. So when you go to the mix console, so you could just do it like that without having to use the effect send. So you could use the effect sends, but you don't have to do that. And if you set those all to pre-fader, then at that point, you know, You may lose volume control, but let me know if there's a particular reason that you need to send it pre-fader via the effects ends as opposed to just routing it to the group here on the output stage. All right, so we see Michael Teams is about to do Cubase 12 upgrade yesterday, so congratulations. It must be a nice birthday gift to yourself. So enjoy new versions. All right. All right, so we're seeing nice Stanley Clark links from Jazz Dude. My college orchestral director is the one that introduced him to Chick Corea, so I've been a Stanley Clark fan for a long time. Saw him in concert a couple times. Had some friends that Ghost wrote soundtracks for him. All right, so you see maybe it's from John Costigan. This might be about the flux. So one thing you could also check, John, is when flux not showing up, but go into your media bay and try going to VST sound, and then you'll probably see like the flux listed here. Try just to come over here and right click and click on rescan disk and see if it shows up then. So, F5 to open the media bay, come over here to the VST sound, expose that, find flux, it'll be alphabetical, and click on rescan disk and see if they show up. See, Stanley Clark is Jazz Dude's personal hero. It's a good personal hero to have. All right, so you see my CC121 always loses its mapping for the 4 function keys ever since Cubase 12. So let me just come over here and see if I'll set up my mapping keys. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply here, and I'll go ahead and exit out of Cubase, and we'll see if those are preserved for us. All right. All right, we'll see if my CC121 settings are maintained. So it looks like that is maintained with my arranger track is what I added. So let me know if I did something differently than you did. All right, wonderful to see Val Lee on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. All right, great to see Spike Williams checking in from Wales. Okay, so we see a question. When I look at MIDI events, they are off, but when I open them in the lower zone, they are on point. So it could be just I think this is maybe a little anomaly in version 12.04, but try going to your preferences. You'll see event display, and then I think under MIDI, try switch this to lines instead of blocks. So once again, preferences, event display, MIDI, switch it to lines as opposed to blocks, and I think that will resolve it for you. And I'm pretty sure that will be fixed pretty soon in the next maintenance update. I don't know when that will be coming out. All right, so we see that Jeff Sabelski saying is Trader Joe's mango sherbet is no match for dreamsicle ice cream from Michael Teams. Yeah, Trader Joe's has some good ice cream, so all right. All right, so we see a question. Halion Sonic, is there a way to get the chords that play from the pads when there's preset chords to be shown on each note instead of on one MIDI note? Would like to see learn the chords sometimes. All right, so let's go ahead and I think what we could do if you wanted to know what the chords are. I'll just do it with like a Halion program here, but same concept. Okay, so let's say I have. All right, so let's say if I just wanted to now come over here. So if you wanted to kind of get an idea of what the notes are, sorry, let me just open this up. We could assign different trigger notes. Sorry, my keyboard controller is not working for some reason. All right, so let's say I wanted this to be, let's see if this is, what we could do is just assign this, let's see if this is C0. But, you could just trigger the particular MIDI note. So right click on the pad itself, and then as you just come over here, if you wanted to just play the chords. I think, let's see if that. Yeah, so it's still gonna just kind of play back that one note. But let's see if there's a way. So we could trigger. So we could trigger it, but then play it back. And let's just say if I wanted to do like a new block chord. So let's come here and snapshot the chord. And this is kind of working in conjunction with the flex phraser. So let's say if I just turn the flex phraser off. All right, so let's do a snapshot of the chord, and this may not be working without my MIDI controller, but we could trigger the chords, but I'm not sure if you could figure it out or if it's working, you know, whatever chords that were kind of inputted. And I don't think that, you know, let's say, we still see kind of the same thing with the trigger notes here. I could play around with it some more if you want to send me an email at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Sorry about that. All right, so you see a question. Did Greg make Cubase? How do you know so much and remember it all? So now there's a lot of really smart people that make me look smart. So I've just been running it for a long time, and I get, you know, asked a zillion questions. I could probably get asked more questions than most people on the subject. So, but try to learn it well so I could do my job okay. All right, so we see question. Hello, Greg. Thank you for your great videos. I have a question. What is the best to use loudness meter scale? So, you know, it could really determine like what your actual delivery format is. So, you know, if you're doing CD, you can get away with, you know, and not going to be on YouTube or streaming or Apple Music or Amazon or Spotify. So each of those, like, you know, if you're doing broadcast, I would come over to the loudness meter and you want to kind of aim for minus 23 LUFS. And then if you were doing more for streaming, you would probably want to be around minus 14 LUFS. Because otherwise those services could basically, could compress or expand the content. I had, like, one of my friends that works with Zed, found kind of like the magic LUFS number for YouTube to make his mixes really jump out. And he's not sharing it with anyone. But he found when he goes to this one specific LUFS value, that it works on YouTube. So he's actually delivering, I think, so many people are delivering multiple mixes for each of the different streaming services. So, it could really matter, if you're going to be on CD, it's not as critical, but if you're doing it for other streaming services, they'll probably give you a guideline. So, rule of thumb is -14 for streaming services and -23 for broadcast. All right, so we see Michael Pierce. I forgot about the profile export. And he has his Cubase 12 working flawlessly at work, so that's great at studio. Thanks for letting us know. All right, so we have guitar play-alongs checking in from Switzerland. It's one of the places I've always wanted to go to. Haven't made it there yet. Thanks for joining us today. All right, my chat field just jumped. Okay. Okay, so question, how can I change, for example, just a kick sample in Groove Agent Kit? Okay, so let's say if I'm here and we just want to change a particular sample. So let's say we have Groove Agent SE. Sorry if I misunderstood earlier. So let's say just want to load the kit with patterns. Let's say, okay, we'll come here. And let's say I have this pattern playing. All right, so let's say if I want to change the kick here. All right, so let's say if you want to do it from the right zone, so let's come over, say, okay, let's come to loops and samples, and I'll just say kick. And I could just drag. So we could do it from the right zone media bay, or you could also just kind of click, select the sound, and then just kind of drag any kick over. Or if you wanted this to come over, you could say, let's go to instruments. And we could also just go to a browser here. So if you wanted to look for any VST sound, but we could say instruments. And I wanted this to be, let's say, kick. So if I had that selected, I could just double audition my different kick sounds. So if you want to just drag and drop, like while it's playing, or just like that. So that's how you could kind of replace just a kick drum sound. So let me know if that's more helpful for what you wanted to do. Okay, so we see RZ Kills just says, just learned something new with the free warp and vocals. Thanks, Greg. So you're welcome. Thanks for being on the live stream. All right, you see Madge Deepers has gotten 1 gallon of Rocky Road ice cream. All right. Okay, so we see question, is there a function like Premiere Pro's ripple delete? So, ripple editing has different definitions in different programs. I'm not a Premiere Pro user, but we'll show you a couple things that might do the trick. So let's say if I'm on this particular project, so if I want to do it on a particular track, if we hit I could select with the range tool and just hit Command or Control plus Shift X and just kind of delete just like that. Or if I wanted to hold down, I think it's Control. Let me get my modifier keys right. And if I hold down like Control or Command plus Shift, I could globally select. And then it's Control plus Shift X to get rid of. So a lot of people would call that a ripple edit. Or if you just want to do it on the select tracks, so just Control plus Shift X, and you'll see other kind of range editing tools available in the Edit menu and the Range sub-menu. So just Control or Command plus Shift X. And then that's what a lot of people will consider a ripple edit. Or if you wanted to do it, globally, you could select all the tracks, including automation and tempo track data and delete. Or if you wanted to do it just on particular tracks, you could do that. So let me know if that is helpful or what you want to do with the ripple edits. All right, so we see John Koskian just saying, hi, Greg. I didn't know Flux was a Halion internal device. I deserve a demerit. So, no, you just think you got smarter today. So that's knowledge is good. All right. All right, so we see Darren here from the UK. Is there an easy way to align an acapella to your beats? Once you have the tempo kind of sorted out, so let's say if I have a beat, we'll just do a new project here. All right, so let's say this is my beat, and its tempo is 95.7. All right, let's just say 95 beats a minute. Okay. All right, so now when we go to listen to our beat, all right, so let's say if we have vocals, and I'll just put that into just a quick. I'll just come here to just some vocal loops. Now, what you want to do is just to have these particular loops as you drop them in. So if you found kind of the tempo, so let's say the tempo of this of our vocals here is 108. At this point, I could just put this particular event into musical mode. And then I'll say, let's make this 108 beats a minute. So now as we play, Sorry, just so now this will be in time. But if all of these tracks are in musical mode, what I could do is now just say, okay, I want these to be 95. And once they're in musical mode, they'll all just kind of play in sync. So now we have a...
I'm the love of my life.
So, you know, once you're in musical mode and you find out what the tempo is of the original, it will, whatever you put as the master, this will almost be like a tempo parasite, if you will, and it will just follow and be like, you know, and just follow that particular tempo and not fluctuate from it. Okay, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. All right, we see Val Lee is also an Ampeg guy too. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Any tips for overcoming frozen video in Nuendo 12? So generally, you know, with video, if it's going to be frozen, I would say it's going to be a codec issue. So if we go to, so make sure it's going to be like the right codec and the right container. So let's say if we just wanted to jump to, I'm just going to Google video support in Nuendo, Cubase. You'll see video support in Steinberg products. And this will give you an idea of the proper codecs that are going to be, you know, ideal, and which container and which codec to work with. So make sure that your file is going to be a proper codec and container file. And sometimes, you know, you may have like in a .mov or like a .mov file or .mp4 that could be a, you know, 14,000 different, you know, codecs for that. So, you know, there's all sorts of stuff. So there's lots of video tutorials and utilities for converting to a video that's this codec to that codec. So check that particular website. And so it's just video support in Steinberg products, and you could find the various settings right there. See, Michael Pierce is selling an Ampeg SVT at the moment. Why? To buy a different Ampeg. So, all right. So we see from Murray Webster, when are we going to get fader flip for effects/cues? So yeah, I've personally asked for that feature for a while. I'll kind of reiterate it, but I'll just kind of make sure to bring up the point again. So, and that would be where, for those who aren't familiar with this particular feature, where you can say, okay, I have, we see it on live sound consoles a lot. I have these tracks and I go to like an effect send. So let's say if I have an effect send here on all these tracks, I'll just... So if we have this, that instead of adjusting the levels here, that we could flip this to a fader and be able to adjust like your effect sends here. So I think a lot of times with, you know, we see it in live consoles a lot, that aren't necessarily as configurable for external control surfaces. But I'll reiterate that point again. Thanks for bringing it up. All right, we see from Jackshot Records, it says, make sure to hit the like button, help support Greg and the awesome work he does. Thank you. All right, so you just see a question. Can you talk about automation? So, sure. So let's say if we wanted to, I'm not sure if there's anything in particular that you wanted to know about automation. So let's say if I have this particular track, so say I'm playing this and now I wanted to automate different parameters, I could just, as I move the fader, click on the W, it will automatically kind of write the automation. Now, if we wanted to go into particular parts of it, I could also just, any plugin, I could just come over here. Or let's come to like maybe an insert. And I wanted to automate an insert effect. All right, so now that we have automation in, now sometimes people like they want to see all of the automation. So one of the great things you could do is go to the automation panel, and you could open it by clicking right here, just probably to the right where it says touch, and going or hitting F6. So if we go to the settings, we could say reveal parameter on right. So now anytime that I would adjust a particular parameter, let's say the more filter, and I move, these settings would automatically be revealed directly in the lanes that show up. And if you wanted to edit automation, it's pretty straightforward as well. So we could just select particular, if I wanted this all to be louder or softer, or if I wanted to tilt it, so it increases in time or decreases in time, or if I wanted to expand or compress the automation data, we could do that. We could also just copy and move automation. So, but let me know if you have like specific questions, and I'd be happy to go into more detail on the specific thing. Okay, so we have a question from At the Source Studios. Please show how to lock a track at the top so it doesn't move with scroll. Also, how to solo defeat. Okay, so let's say I wanted this track to always be in the top. So all we have to do is, we'll see right here, it's pretty subtle, like a little divider symbol. So we're going to click there, and we could move tracks into the upper zone. So as I scroll down, let me just clear my throat. So as I scroll down, that track will always be directly at the top. So all my other tracks can be right here. So a lot of times marker tracks will automatically get placed into the upper area. So I'm scrolling down, but that track will always be visible at top. And if I wanted to stop that behavior, I could just come and turn off the divide track list. And we can say, okay, now it's going to be towards the bottom. So now without that function on, it'll just kind of scroll, but turn it on. Now we could just lock it in and have kind of two different views. All right, and we had a question. Okay, and also how to solo defeat. So I think if you just go to the solo button, so let's say if we come Right over here, let's say we'll go to our solo button, right? And just hold it down. That will enable solo defeat. So now if I come here, just hold down the solo button with the left mouse button, and then that will put it into solo defeat. All right, so we see Benny from Sweden wants everyone to smash the like button. All right, so we have a question. Can you please explain how to sidechain, compressor, or delay? Okay, so just jump back to this project here. Okay, so let's say I have a track and I wanted to do a side chaining on the bass when the kick drum comes in. So basically I want like almost a compressor to kick in when the kick drum comes in on kind of the synth bass sound. So what I'm going to do is select this track, and I'm going to, let's say I have on an insert a compressor plug-in. So what we could do is we could activate sidechain. We'll see this little icon here that activates a sidechain. And now what I need to do is to have it go to a sidechain source. So I'm going to go to add a sidechain source. I'll say I want it to be this particular kick drum. So now what's going to happen, and I have a pretty heavy-handed just for demonstration purposes. So every time that the kick drum will come in, the synth track is now compressed. So that's how you do side chaining. So just make sure that you activate it here. On what you want to be side chained, what you want to kind of change as a result of the side chaining. Click on the setup and then choose your sidechain input, and you could choose multiple sources as well. All right, so we see, how do I put effect on my vocals? Okay. So there's two ways of adding effects. You could add effects via like an effect send, which could be shared across multiple tracks, or you could have, and that's often used for like reverbs, delays, maybe coursing, and you could also have effects that are on a particular track as an insert. So let's say I want to I'm going to select this track, and let's go to our sends. Okay, so let's say we'll just take our vocal here, which will be dry.
Do you recall the day we first met?
So if I wanted to add like a reverb that could be shared like to the guitar in this, I could right click here in the sends. And let's say add effects send to channel 1.
Yellow coach to carry us home. You looked my
and
way,
what we can do is just simply add more of the effect.
It caught my breath while
And we
you
could blend
called me
kind of the
to.
dry signal.
Well, even now I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
And now if I want to go to the guitar, we could just say, okay, I wanted to come here, and I wanted the guitar to go through the same reverb as the voice.
And our first kiss, there was no regret.
So I turned on the
right
send.
after that garbage show.
if I wanted to add like maybe an EQ or a compressor to my voice,
Old my
I
mom
could
said
just
you
come
were too
and do this
damn
as an
good
insert.
for any boy that dumb.
So let's say, okay, I just want it now to
His
come over
soured
here.
words are now dead and done. That was a long, long time ago.
So at this point, we could just.
Now our two grown daughters.
So this
are
is only on
raising
this particular track.
kids of their own.
Or we could have sends that will be shared across multiple. That could be shared across multiple tracks. Okay, and since we're here, I have another follow-up question. Please explain why the effects end makes my track sound like it's doubled, like it has a reverb on it or a chorus effect. You know, so if we're here, let's take this.
Long time ago.
So as soon as we add an effects end here.
In the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home.
So, you know, it's going to add the actual effect here. Now, if you're doing this during recording, it could be that, you know, the reverb effect has latency and it's like during the recording process as you're monitoring that it's adding, you know, that it takes time to process and that could be causing the delay. But let's say if I just want to do like a bit of chorusing and reverb.
You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me to.
So let's say I'll just come here.
Well, even now I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
So here we just hear like the effects blended in, but it's not creating like a double delay. But if you're tracking and monitoring with those plugins during the recording process, then you may have a delay. And that only happens during the recording or tracking process. So it could be that you want to use plugins that will have lower latency or use an audio interface like the Steinberg UR series that have built-in reverb so that you can monitor with reverb without any latency. So we just see Greg. How old is your / our youngest Cubase student? I remember doing a bunch of stuff like early on for Sidney Harmon's son. So that was kind of fun. I got to go to his house one day. And Sidney Harmon at the time was, you know, CEO of Harmon International. So I got to meet him in a meeting and he invited me to come hang out with his son and do Cubase stuff. I think he was like 7 or 8 at the time. He's probably in his 30s now and probably owns a lot of Samsung stock. So that was kind of fun. And I've taught my son stuff as well, but maybe other people, I'm not sure if this is appropriate school time for a lot of people or not. But but there's a lot of young kids running Cubase, especially on iPad and stuff. So, but I've been happily teaching my son upright bass. He just started doing it for school. And he's like kind of wickedly gifted at it already. All right, so Murray Webster says, on this past Friday, he celebrated 45 years as a professional mixer. Congratulations, it's a huge milestone. All right, so we see, so I guess this is maybe just with the effects in general, like to spruce it up. Also, is there anything such as the likes of auto-tune or that? So, if you wanted to do kind of graphic vocal tuning, you could go into the sample editor and go to Vary Audio. And here we could have all of the graphic editing. If you wanted to do kind of like a real-time correction via a plugin, we could go to the inserts. And if we go to pitch shift, you'll see pitch correct. And here you could say, okay, the key is, let's say we wanted to do, our internal, we're in A major. And this can automatically kind of snap the pitch of the notes to be in tune. So 2 different approaches to doing tuning inside of Cubase. We see Wayne just says, please forgive my lack of knowledge. I'm brand new to Cubase. Well, we're happy to have you on the live stream, and welcome to being a Cubase user. And just ask any question you want. That's the whole point of the live streams. All right, and we have Graham Gardner checking in from West Yorkshire, UK. So I see, hello, I'm glad to be here. I have a question. I'm sorry, it's from Belinda Andre. I have a question. I'm sorry, for Dorico, is there an option to loop some bars like in Cubase? So let's say if we have Dorico. So it's going to be a slightly different process, but I think, I haven't done this in Dorico in a long time, but all right, so let's say if I'm just here. So I think if we hit Shift plus R, we could just say, like, repeat. Or just hit R. You could just kind of repeat your different phrases in Dorico like that. So let's say I just have this and I just hold down the letter R. You could just repeat just like that. So let me know if that is helpful. So it's a different paradigm than what you have in Cubase. Okay. All right. So I just see from trigger warning, I do have an Insonic SQR Plus with MIDI control, but not sure how to control the effects on PC. So anything that will kind of spit out. So I'm not sure if you wanted to control like the effects of Cubase from like your MIDI controller. But if you go to like the MIDI remote, we could just say anything that will, I will, let's say we'll make a new controller. So say, in Sonic has been out of business for a while. I got to go there like right as they were going out of business. That was fun. So, but I'll show you how we could just take any kind of MIDI control to control different aspects. So if we say, okay, I want this, my MIDI controller isn't going to work. Let me see if I could get it to wake up here. Hang on 1 second. Okay, got it back. All right. So let's come over here. I'll say let's go to my P4. So anything that just kind of, so you want to set up the MIDI input and output ports. And we wherever that's connected on your MIDI device. And then we want to kind of just create, so let's say now I want to make knobs that do different functions. So I'm going to now just select the visual representation of what it is, whether it's a slider, a knob, a button, and then I'm going to just move the different knobs. And let's say, okay, I have more knobs here, like a bottom row. So we could kind of visually create our control surface like this. And then whatever we want to control, like if we have these set for what we call a mapping assistant, I could just select the particular knob. And at this point we could say, I want this to be even a focus quick control. So anything that transmits like MIDI CC1, we could just at this point come over. Let's say I wanted to control the effects. At this point, let's go to, let's say, our sends. And now I could just, change like different parameters of effects and map these to various quick controls. So we could have different quick controls that will be mapped for different functions. So, but you have to kind of just make a quick MIDI remote, and then you should be all set, as long as it's transmitting and receiving MIDI back and forth. All right, just... Okay. All right. Great to see Graham Witcher from Royal Wooten Bassett. It's great to see you on the Zoom on Friday. All right. So we see trigger warning. This is probably about the Ensoniq SQR. So it says his Ensoniq SQR is going into a Roland keyboard and has USB out. Wondering if the MIDI USB converter would help. So definitely having kind of a MIDI interface. There's a number of inexpensive USB ones that would definitely work for that. Sending it into the Roland, you could play the Roland, but that may not transmit it to the Cubase over the USB. So. Okay, so we have a question from Andre Pascal. Is there a way to transfer presets from an older VSTi to the media bay instead of manually saving them one by one? So if it's like an FXP, FXB preset, so I'm not sure if it's like an early VST2 preset. I think I may not have any on my system, but let me just take a look and but I think once you come here, if you open up the, there's an FXP. If it's with the FXP and FXB, so, you could do an FXP, which is the preset, and an FXB, which is the bank, which contains a number of presets. So try loading up the FXB and then saving that as a VST3 preset. So, give that a shot. I don't have any plugins that I could test it with here. I may have some still on my personal studio PC. If you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so you just see trigger warning. So I see Jazz Dude mentioned if he had like 5-pin DIN MIDI cable. So a 5-pin DIN is kind of like the older MIDI cables where it has 5 different pins inside of kind of a round connector, and that's what's called a 5-pin DIN. So that was like what a MIDI cable was as opposed to a USB cable. See, Michael Pierce has to dash out. Thanks for being on the live stream so far. We hope you catch it back. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. Okay, so I think I'm in the neighborhood where I was. All right, so you see from trigger warning, just saying a 1/4-inch cable into mixer and PC makes sounds, but no interface to manipulate envelope and stuff. So, figure out if you want to manipulate, what you want to change. So if you want to change aspects inside of the Ensoniq, what you have to do is connect that to a MIDI interface, not into another MIDI device. If you take a MIDI cable out of your Ensoniq into your Roland keyboard that has a USB connection, you could play sounds in the Roland keyboard if it had sounds. But it's not going to get it into the computer. So you need to, on your Ensoniq, that's going to have like a MIDI in and out cables, and you could buy a USB to MIDI in and out cables for $20-$30 if that. But basically that's going to send the MIDI information, like what notes are played, but it doesn't transmit the sound. So the sound is going to be transmitted over the 1/4-inch outputs. And you'll probably connect that to a mixer. But a lot of times, you realize that you could actually just have all of your different sounds internally here, and it's going to be, many years later in technology. So, if you wanted to just come over to Retrolog and be able to have virtual analog synthesis, or you wanted to have samplers, you could have all this internally. But if you wanted to be able to, trigger envelopes, you're going to need to connect a MIDI output from the keyboard into a MIDI interface. And that could be a USB cable that's designed as a USB MIDI interface, or an audio interface like a Steinberg UR series has MIDI in and out. You could connect it to that. And then that would record the MIDI information. If you're changing sounds on the synthesizer, you could then record that, but it's not recorded as audio. Just the result is sent out, after, the changes you make, it will generate the tones and send the audio out, but the 1/4-inch cable won't actually communicate with the computer as MIDI information. So get a MIDI interface and connect your actual Ensoniq, the 5-pin DIN cables. You want to go out to the computer, and from the computer to go in to the Ensoniq, and then set the USB. You'll add a MIDI track, and the MIDI track, whatever input you have that your Ensoniq is connected to, you could choose there, or choose all MIDI inputs. And to send it out, you want to choose the destination port of what MIDI device is being sent out and is connected to your Ensoniq. I know it's kind of confusing coming into it at this stage, like 20, 30 years later. So. Yeah. So, and again, I see kind of further comments. It says your Roland has USB as well, so it's probably not going to that probably the USB for your Roland is only for the Roland. So. All right, so we see for mixing tips, another question. When I play sounds, let me just find it again, sorry. When I play some loops or samples in the right side media panel, I can see it plays, but no audio is coming. Any idea how to fix this? So probably what you want to do is to go to your audio connections. And this seems counterintuitive at first, but go to outputs and set it to not connected. Go to the control room, right click and add a monitor. And then where the output signal is going, you want to, I have my Yamaha HS7 monitors, and these are connected to my UR24C left and right. So once it's going through the control room, we can now come over here and just be able to audition different sounds. Just like that. So just make sure that so we'll go again to the audio connections, to control room, right click to add a monitor, and then assign the outputs there. Go to outputs and set that to not connected, and then you can audition just like so. So we have a question. Is there a possibility to default save a low cut on the channel strip, or does it only save the EQ? So I think it's only going to save the EQ settings. So let's say if I want it to come over here. So, this is almost, even though it's in the channel EQ, that these aren't really carried over with the default settings. So if I want to go to the EQ, let's save as default preset. All right, so I'll do new project. Yeah. So, but if we switched this to like, a high pass filter here, then that could be saved. But this is kind of a separate area that's just kind of placed into the EQ folder. I know it's a little kind of a bummer and it seems like it should work because it's there, but it's actually kind of a separate processor. All right, I see Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of butter pecan ice cream. That's very generous. Thank you. Michael is saying that I'm strong in the force. So, see, trigger warning just saying is 1991 synth sound module and SQR from Insonic. Yeah, I remember my friend saving up and buying one. You see that Jazz Dude also has a Kawai K1 too. That was my first keyboard synth that I got. So mine still works. All right, my chat field just jumped. Let me just... All right. All right, so I just see from Murray Webster, just says, I've been asking for years fundamental function on real desks. So I'm not sure if that's with the flipping to, flipping sends or Q mixes down. So, but I don't know if that's like, I don't remember SSLs or APIs doing that. All right, but let me know if I missed something else, Murray. Okay, so I see from Wayne Dumo, just says, when I do that, I get the option for no bus left and right. So let me see if I could scroll up and get context for this. I know this is maybe with like vocals, but let me know if maybe if you could, if you need an answer, just kind of give me a little context on that, Wayne. Sorry. Yeah, we see from Trigger Warning just saying it was hoping the Roland would play nicely in between somehow. So yeah, you could, play the sounds in the Roland, but it's not going to probably take your MIDI input and be functioning as a external USB audio an external USB MIDI interface. All right, so a question from Madge Deepers. How do you use the automation panel? All right, so let's say... so we'll open up the automation panel. You can do this by hitting F6. So here we could set different automation modes. So you could say, okay, I want to touch, auto latch, crossover, or trim. And, you know, we could do fill modes. So let's say at this point, you know, I wanted to, if I had a punch in and punch out activated, and I have fill in loop. So let's say I was just kind of automating parameters here, and I just quickly wanted to fill in the loop. I could place this into automation, and if I wanted to write automation in a loop, I could just say, and now at that point, it'll write the automation for the whole loop. Or if we say let's say I had a big mix and I just haven't gotten to this channel yet. Let's say I have like 100 channels. I could say we have our fill mode to start. So then I could say, okay, I want this track to start right here. And then it will write the automation point at the beginning of that particular area. So I could say, okay, let's, like, even if I'm here and I just wanted to set the initial level, we could just do fill to start or fill to end. And if we wanted to just click on it twice, we could just put in those particular values. There's also a mode here where we could put it for virgin territory automation. So if we go to virgin territory, I could just move and kind of just create automation. I'll just get rid of all of my automation here. So if I wanted to just have automation on this particular track, I don't have to have automation that's tied to beginning or end. So as I'm playing along, as I write the automation, it's just going to write the automation at that point. And if I wanted to fill like the gaps, I could just come over here, and now it will automatically kind of connect the different parts. We have for suspending reading or suspending writing of different automations. So let's say I wanted to adjust the EQ. So let's say I'm just kind of finding the EQ tone. I could, if I have suspend write, I could automate the volume, but as I'm kind of looking for the EQ tone and searching, this won't be automated, but my volume and panning information will be. So we could suspend writing or reading of different types of automation. We could also say, I only want to see particular types of automation on all the tracks. Like I want to see my volume automation or my pan automation, EQs, dynamics, sends, inserts, or show all of used automation, or hide all of my automation. So those are some of the things you could do with the panel. And there's also some additional options where if we have data on a particular track and we have automation on it, we could say show data on tracks. So if you wanted to write automation and see the MIDI notes or the waveform, so especially if you have multiple different automation elements and you don't really have a good reference based on the audio waveform of the track, you could see kind of a visual waveform right there. So that's some of the things you could do with the automation panel. Hope that's helpful. Okay. All right, so we see question. Hi, Greg. I want to create a mixer-like functionality for live use. How much resources does Group FX audio tracks use? Let's say I make 50 of each. So it could depend on the plugin, and if the plugin is VST3, there is some reverb plugins, depending on the patch, may take a lot of processing power for a convolution reverb, or a simple algorithmic reverb may take a fraction of that. So it could really depend But one of the things that you could do is if you go to the preferences and then go to plugins under VST, there is something that you could just say suspend VST3 plugin processing when there's no audio signals present. So that way a VST3 plugin won't be taking up CPU resources if it's not doing anything at the time. So that could really go a long way. But we have lots of people doing live stuff in Cubase. So you could definitely do it. All right. All right. So we just see question. I'd like to speed up my workflow. I'd rather learn shortcuts than make them myself. How can I enable that? It seems like there are only a handful of shortcuts active for me right now. So there's probably maybe 1,000-ish or so shortcuts that are currently available on your system. And if you wanted to figure out what the shortcuts are, go to your edit menu to key commands. One is you could just type a shortcut in and select this field, and then you could actually just, say, oh, what does Shift P do? What does Shift U do? What does, Shift I do? What is Shift R? What is Control R? What is Alt R? What is Alt Control R? So you get a sense that, so if you only think that there's a handful, all of these keyboard shortcuts that we see coming listed here in these keys, they're all available for you to use, and you can make your own. But that way you could actually, and if it's a particular function you're looking for, like, oh, I want, what's quantize? Type it in there, and then you could search for, different, different functions. So you can say, oh, quantize Q, or what is this? So there are hundreds of keyboard shortcuts in the program. So that's how I would learn them. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. All right. All right. So we see from Jay from Connecticut. I guess from Secret Studios. Hi, Greg. Have you dealt with many cases in which a track was sent to multiple other audio tracks and recorded with effects on top of those audio tracks? Please demo. Okay. Okay, so let's say we have okay, so let's say I want to add some effects on this. All right, so let's come over here and so let's just add some inserts. So if you're dealing with inserts, all right, so let's do a little mono delay. Let's make it. All right, and let's just say we want a little reverb. All right, so if we have, And let's say we'll do the reverb. I'll just throw in a modulation of some kind. So let's say. And I'll add an instrument track, or let's add an effects channel. All right, so let's say if I have both of these going to a group, I could say, let's just take a group channel. So if I wanted to just come here, I'm going to say, let's go to group 1 here. So I'm setting the group as the input, and we'll hit add track. So now as we play the track here, I could just record. And now if I wanted to just listen to that is being rendered out through all of the effects, or if you wanted to, so we could capture all the insert and send effects. You could also kind of get the same thing if you wanted to take that particular track. Another way of doing kind of this, to get to the same result might be just to go to edit and go to, render in place and say, okay, I want to do my complete signal path, and come over here, and let me just not have that selected. I'll select this. And now we could kind of have the same thing with all the different effects rendered onto the file like that. So you could send it to a group and record the output of a group as the input into another track. All right, so we have Avery checking in from Tel Aviv. Glad you could join us today. See, Valley's just saying double bass for the win. So yeah, I'm going to turn my son into Francois Rabath. So that's my goal. See, Valley's just wants to say, did I ever mention I'm at the point where I dream in Cubase? So. Okay, so I see from Spike Williams, it just says, I glued some different guitar takes together, then I went to warp them and couldn't get it to work. Where am I going wrong, apart from being the world's worst engineer? So don't worry about that. So, realize that when you go to apply, let's say we go to do warping on events that have been glued together. So right now, these are events. When we want to have multiple events kind of work together, we could glue these together, and this transforms from an event into a part. So now when we double click, we go into the part editor. So here, so I don't think that there's free warping available in, let's see, within the part editor. But what you could do, Spike, is just come here and choose to go to your audio, and then you'll see an option for dissolve part. And then once you're there, then you could do all of the warping. Because, you know, in essence, you're taking the part is a collection of events, and the warping occurs at the event level. So select the part, and then you'll have access to all of your free warping options. So you can just kind of come here and warp away. All right, so we have another question about this. Is there a way to turn the send volume slider into a fader similar to other programs? So currently, no. But you know, usually like the send can be. Let's say if I go into my mixer here, just add a bunch of audio tracks. You know, but once you're in the sends, it's, you know, it's not so hard to, you know, come over here and adjust this, you know, and that's been kind of, you know, made bigger to make it easier to adjust, but there isn't a flip state. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Can we change the folder of a project inside of Cubase? So if you wanted to put it into a new folder, what you could do is just do a backup project, and then you could move everything to a newly created folder. If you wanted to change, like, you know, where files are recorded to, you could just select a number of different tracks, right-click, and set the record folder to be independent. But if you wanted to, you know, migrate a whole project to a new folder, just choose the backup project, and now I'll prompt you to define a new folder, and then everything will be moved into the new folder. If you have files that are just kind of scattered all around, you can go to the media menu and just choose prepare archive, and that will move all the different audio files that maybe are in different folders and move it into the current project folder. All right, so we see a question. How do I set the pre-listen volume in a media bay to 0 dB? I can't find anything with numbers, just a small fader on top of the preview. So if, all right, so let me just see. So if it's this monitor volume, let's say if I come here, a lot of times if you just hold down the command or control key, that will set it to its default value of 0 dB. So if you're there, just set that. Hold down the control or command key and click in the volume, and that will set it to 0 dB. You know, make sure I read that right. So you see a question. Hey, Greg, I know you're not allowed to give new product release dates, but wondering if I purchase Absolute, how long would a no-cost upgrade usually cover, and would you buy it now or wait? So if you wanted to do it, you know, if you wanted to kind of get within a grace period, I would probably wait a little bit. And that's probably all the information I could share. So. Okay, so we see a question. I have a nice channel strip. I want to use it for tracking, but also sometimes as an external effects, but can't use it both input and external effects. In audio connections, I need to make 2 presets there. All right, so let's say we have, so let's go ahead and just close this. Let's say we look at my mix console and all right, so let's say we have an external plugin. So I'm going to go to my audio connections. Let's go to external effects and let's go to add. So let's say channel strip. Okay, so let's say it's a mono in, mono out. Okay. So we could have the channel strip during your input stage, just as an, as an insert. And since you only have one of them at a time, once it's, you're done recording with it, at that point we could just say, okay, I want it to be on, this particular channel. And then just kind of load it up and play it back. So at that point, it's the same configuration, but after you've tracked through it on the input, you probably don't need it for the input stage anymore. And then you could use it elsewhere. But basically, instead of having 2 different presets, you have one preset that could be used a single instance at a time. All right, so we see the Twoster is checking in from Germany. We're glad you can make it. You don't have to worry about being late. All right, and we see Twoster his question is, just finished mixing of an awkward live recording. One thing I wondered, is there a way I can cut something out? Example, a connection pop with automatically time stretching the cut. So what you could do, I don't think it would automatically time stretch it, but let's say if I wanted to, let's say this is our annoying pop, I could just adjust my grid. So I'll make this larger so we can see it. So let's say you had a connection pop here. What I would do is, just come over here. So if you wanted to just, get rid of that, you could do that. But let's say I delete that, switch to sizing mode here to sizing applies time stretch. And then like if you needed to fill gaps, you could just say, okay, I want to take this part of the audio and just time compress it to automatically kind of fill that space. So you have that consistency in tone, like kind of like almost in post-production room tone. So you could switch to different modes from kind of normal sizing to sizing moves contents or sizing applies time stretch. So try to come over here, split just a little bit of room noise. And if you have it like from somewhere else, you could also, so you could time compress that, or you could just choose to duplicate and, place this event over top. So, maybe that would help depending on this scenario. So if you wanted to only duplicate until like the next event to kind of get, consistency tonally with it, you could do that as well. All right, my chat field jumped on me. Let me see if I can. Okay, so we have from RZ Kills. Hi, Greg. Can you briefly go through the use of chord pads and how to use it as a suggestion tool for creating some interesting progressions? Yeah, so let's go take a look. I think I can do it in here quickly. Okay, so let's say just create. All right, so let's say I just wanted to come over and all right, let's go to the chord track. I just want to put some chords in. So let's say. All right, so let's say I have D, B minor, and I want to do something different here. Maybe not go to the 2 chord. So let's say now. So we'll go to our chord assistant. I'll turn this down. So now what I want to do is go to this chord that's not defined, and we could double click and go to the chord assistant, and we could look at it based on different levels of complexity. So let's say, okay, maybe, and I wanted to see this by cadence or common chord notes. So let's say, and now I wanted more levels of complexity. So let's say, okay, I wanted this to be. And I want this to be more complex. So like a B flat augmented chord is one that I probably wouldn't think to use. And we could also look at this via proximity. So we can say, okay, if we're like, and I want to try something a little out of the box. Or if you wanted to look at it in circle of fifths. So that way you could find chords, because it's really easy to be in musical ruts and kind of use the same chord progressions all the time. But try out different chords, because we all know, that there's particular chord progressions that work, and and a lot of chord progressions are become very cliche. But just try the chord assistant to try and find new interesting chords that you wouldn't try before. Wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. All right. right, wonderful to see Pablo. So we have the whole hot mess contingent on. So great to have you on, Pablo. And Gareth. It's my rhythm section compatriot. Okay, so you see from Avri, how can I move the project folder after saving it? So again, either with the backup project, or if you wanted to just, wherever the project folder is, just using kind of Finder or your Explorer, you could just say, okay, I want to take this and move it to my desktop or wherever. So, and all right, so we see from Secret Studios, Jay, it says a buddy sent me a video of a song that he wants tabs for. I have the video up and I've cut the audio down to appropriate length. How would you detect notes showing tabs for print? So sometimes, like tablature is actually, like showing the fret number and the string. So, but sometimes, but a lot of people think of tablature. So, if it's a single note, you could do that and go into, so let's say if I wanted to, I'll show you an example here quickly. All right, so if it's, like a whole mix of a song, you're not going to be able probably, unless the guitar is playing single notes by itself, to turn it into tablature. But, if you have like the MIDI part, like if we wanted to, let me just find, I think there's, but if you do, let's say we have a guitar part here and in MIDI, so if it's a single part, you could do like very audio to extract it. But let's say if you now wanted to turn this into tablature, you can say enable guitar tablature. So if it's like MIDI, so we could just see the tablature that's indicated here. So what a lot of people think of tablature is going to be working with, chord charts. So let's say if I wanted to take a song and come up with the chords. So, technically it's not tablature, but this is what a lot of people mean. I would take the guitar part and drag it to the chord track and create just like a blank MIDI part. Go into the score editor and we could switch this to page mode. And from the scores menu that will become active once you're in the score editor, say show chord track, and then you could have the chord track kind of automatically just laid out for you right there. So let me know if that's what you mean by tablature. Just drag the track to a chord track and that will, do the analysis on the chords, and then create a blank part and open up the score editor from there. So you see from trigger warning, just says I was sort of hoping to manipulate the sounds in the Ensoniq, but exporting them to manipulate in Cubase is probably darn near the same thing. So yeah, a lot of times, like especially in Sonics, at that point they were kind of very anti-computer, almost as a company, and they want to do everything in their particular workstation. So they made it not so friendly. It's, where you had to kind of do everything for the sample manipulation, everything in the box. And, you could maybe sequence, have a sequencer send stuff, but, that device really isn't set up for doing a lot of editing or to communicate with external devices. It's kind of a closed ecosystem. So, and some people like that, sometimes some people work better and thrive when there's less options and less choices. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you do want to take it to the next level, often with situations and equipment like that, you're kind of stuck. And that's probably why Ensonic's not in business anymore. So we see from the Twoster, the automation bit was awesome. So glad it was helpful. Hopefully it helped Madge as well. So great to have Pablo on the live stream. We've missed you. Hope that your gigging schedule slows down. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Can you suggest the best way to make a backing track for me to use at an open mic session? I want to take one of my finished projects and not only drop out the lead, but adjust the mix. So, what a lot of people would do, it's in studio lore, it's often called a TV mix, where it's like, okay, I have...
The day we first met.
And a lot of times it's just, people will just come over here and, like when you do a mix, you do like the same exact mix and you just drop out like the lead vocal or the lead vocal and acoustic guitar if it's someone who's like a singer-songwriter and they have, and it's called a TV mix. So you may not have to adjust so much, like adjust the levels, but just make sure that's kind of consistent so that you could output the same level on guitar at like an open mic night and your vocal with it. I don't think you'd have to do too much changing of the mix unless you're doing a lot of really creative side chaining from your guitar or your voice into different things. But if it's just kind of basic backing tracks, I don't think you would have to do too much tweaking on the mix. So. Okay, so we see a question, where to enable sound in Cubase? I imported tracks, but no sound. So we want to tell it what audio interface that you're using. So if we go to your studio menu to studio setup, we'll see audio system. Here we want to send it to your audio interface that you're using. And if you don't have a built-in audio interface and you just want to use like the output on your laptop, you could use generic MIDI, generic low latency driver on Windows or built-in audio on the Mac platform. Once that's done, you want to go to your audio connections. You could go to either your control room if you're in Cubase Pro and enable a monitor, or just go simply to the outputs. And then you just want to say, this is connected to this audio interface and to these particular outputs. And that's all you have to do. So go to define the interface in Studio to Studio Setup and click on the audio system. And then you could hit F4 and that will take you to the audio connections and make sure that the output is set there to your audio interface as well. Pablo saying he wants coffee before pizza. Unfair. My cat woke me up at 4:45 this morning, so I need a coffee badly. So all right. So we see a question. Hi, is it possible to create a macro for automation that will allow me to only delete automation between locators for selected track? All right, let's give it a shot. So let's say I come here, we have locators, and I'm just going to put in some automation. Okay, so we might be able to do this with the Project Logical Editor. So let's go to the setup. So in our action, we'll say delete. Media type is equal to automation and container. Let's say property. Let's see if we can find it in property. Position is inside cycle. Okay. And let's make it on selected track. All right. All right, let me just see if this works just out of curiosity. All right, I'm just going to hide. Okay, so let's say if we want to do this, so now that deletes all of our automation between there, but let's make it selected track. Okay, so I'm going to come here and add additional automation. Okay, so let's say I have just make this automation track smaller. All right, and with this, we may want to also say property is set to parent object is selected. All right, let me just... So I will delete all the automation. Let's get it on just a selected track. Let's see if we could just. There we go. All right. So what you want to do, I'll just save this as a preset. Okay, so we want to choose delete. Then we want to say media type is equal to automation. And for the Boolean condition, and the property is set to parent object is selected. And position is inside the PPQ. So now we see automation here in this track, but now I have this particular track, and boom, it's only going to affect the automation on the selected track. So let me know if that's helpful. And then if you wanted to just trigger that from a particular keyboard shortcut, we could, it's always going to be available under the Process Project Logical Editor presets. So if you wanted to go to key commands, you'll see Process Project Logical Editor, and then you'll see the preset in there. Let me just delete automation on selected track inside cycle. All right. And it looks like there might have even been a preset in there for that already. All right. So Gareth wants some sting. All right. Apparently Gareth has lost his faith in me, so and wants a Sting backing track. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is there any plugin in Cubase Pro 12 that could do something similar to Heat in Pro Tools by adding saturation playing without affecting the tracks? Yeah, I mean, every channel, if you go to the channel strip, you can just come here to saturation. Check out Magneto. Steinberg was the first company to model, analog tape. There's tape saturation, and these also work as plugins as well. But, check out Magneto, which you could also run in plugin form under distortion. But that's a great, and you could actually put that on your input channels and track through it. See, Valley just saying he once saw Steve Gadd live. Life definition done, he says. Yeah, I got to record him with Eric Clapton at the first Crossroads Festival. See, Jazz Dude just saying Stanley Clarke and Jaco Pastorius convinced him in the late 70s he would never be a good bass player. I felt the same way hearing Jeff Berlin's bass solo in Mono's De Piedra from his Pump It album. So made me want to study music, and now I get to help Jeff out. And he gave me a special thanks on his latest CD, Jack Songs. So check it out if you want to hear some great musicianship. Jeff Berlin's Jack Songs. All right, great to see Diamond District Studios. And we see Spike Williams. It says it makes sense with the warping on the parts. All right. We see what's the best way from Lawrence. It was great to see you for a little bit on the Zoom. Let me just find the. Just finding. Sorry, my mix. Okay. Lawrence asks, what is the best way to reinstall Windows machine with Cubase 12 Pro? My typical MO is new hard drive clone system rather than clean install. So, I did this on a laptop when I went to Windows 10 from Windows 7. Made sure I backed everything up, all of my content, and I just did, I just did kind of a, like start from scratch on, because I did my Windows 7 to Windows 10 update like twice, and that wasn't working well. And then I just took away the whole system and started from scratch. There's like kind of a restore function, I think, I know there's one in Windows 10. Like my mom gave one of her old computers to my son, and we just kind of wiped it, and it's like starting it from scratch. And when I did that from my Windows 7 to Windows 10 machine, that was causing all sorts of problems. That machine has been flawless, and I've had that machine like 10, 11 years now. So there is just kind of like a function, and I'm sure you could Google it. Jazz Dude probably knows exactly what it is, but how to just kind of basically just start, from like as if it was a brand new machine. So you could definitely try that, but make sure you have everything backed up, all your plugins and everything. Okay. So you see a question: when I bounce a MIDI and put the tick on mute the clip afterwards, how do I activate the MIDI clip again? It's not regularly muted. Don't know the topic fits the stream. So yeah, it sure does. So let's say I wanted to mute just like, or let's say I assume it's a render in place. Let me just. So let's say I assume maybe it's a render in place. So let's say I want to render in place this particular part. So I will go to render in place, get to my render settings, and I will, I have this for muting the source events. So let's say we'll go ahead and render the piano part here. So after we render it, the piano part will become muted so that it's not playing at the same time as the audio event. So if you want, or as the MIDI event, so all you have to do is just literally come here and just with the mute tool that looks like an X is, so if it looks white like that, just simply grab the mute tool and see. But if I misunderstood, just let me know. So you see trigger warming, just asking, are we allowed to have a kazoo in life without a DAW? So sure. My first instrument, I got one when my older brother got a French horn starting in 6th grade. All right, so it says, hi Greg, my mix console question. My mix console doesn't open with F3 anymore. How can I set it back to default values? Thank you. So if you just come to your edit menu to key commands, first thing you do is make sure that F3 isn't opening something else. So if you just click in the assign to key and hit F3, you could see what that function is set to. But what you want to do is go to your devices menu. So you see devices, and it'll indicate that that's in the studio menu. And then you'll see mix console 1. mix console here and just come, we could select this particular element, and what you want to do is, hit F3. You'll see F3 and then hit assign, and that will assign F3 to open up the mix console for you. So we see the two-stir, this is with the kind of the stretching, says that's exactly what I was looking for. Great stuff. And then Gerald Ely with the sizing appliance time stretch says that's a cool tip. All right. All right, we're glad that Brian Sawyer can make it from Wilmington. Hope you made it through the storm okay. So we see a question. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to use a UAD Apollo Twin to route main inputs, outputs while simultaneously using a Steinberg MR816 for external effects duties? I think that you might have to. I don't have my MR816s connected anymore, but the MR816 may have to be set up. I'm thinking that it might have to be the selected ASIO device for the external effects to operate. But there's many interfaces where you could get the same plugins, but one of the things I think, if the MR816, you might be able, I'm not sure if it came with the UR28M and after, but there are software native versions of the plugins. So see if, I'm just thinking, I don't think that they're ever released for MR816 users, but I'm inclined to say, and I would have to just, to say with certainty, I would have to try it, but that the MR816 needs to be the active selected ASIO driver for that to happen, for you to access the internal DSP. So I'm inclined to say no. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, just wondering, if I record with pre-count and play notes before kicking, I get every time the first note in the event plus notes start layering. Is there an option to set it up? All right, so let me just go back to different project. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. Hope everyone's learning a tip or trick. And that if you have learned something new, that you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. It's wonderful to see so many new users as well. All right, so let's say, all right, so I will arm this track and okay, so it says if I record with pre-count, so let's say I'm here, I'm going to activate the pre-count and play notes before it kicks in. I get every time a first note in the event plus the note still layering. Is there an option to set it up? So let's say I'm here, and let's say I come in a little early. All right, let me just make sure my... All right, so let's take a look at the event. All right, so that's where I had doubled the note. Let me just... I'll try it one more time and see. I'll just put like a 2 measure part. So we'll just put it in record. Okay. And I'll look at this in the list editor. So looks like everything kind of recorded correctly to me. Sorry, son's bus should be landing now. So it just says if I record pre-count and play notes before kick in, I get every time the first note in the event, the notes start layering. All right, so I'll just try playing a little bit ahead of the beat. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I played early. And I had auto quantize on, so let me take that off. All right, and let me see if I come over here and if we set an extra bar offset. So everything kind of seems like it's working to me, but let me know if I'm misunderstanding. All right, so we see a question from Chris Harrison. Hi, Greg, you are the man. Thank you for that. It says, I recorded 44.1 and 64-bit float. Do I need to use dither when I export my files to 44.1 16-bit? What does dither do? So dither, what it actually does is, you could actually, in Cubase 11 and earlier, there was the Apogee UV22 dithering, and then there's the Lin 1 dither by MATLAB that was introduced in Cubase 12. And what that does is it basically introduces some noise so that we have kind of the perceived quality difference from the dithering, so that it, we still maintain the quality of the higher resolution file when truncating it down to a lower deliverable format in resolution. So, but you could definitely put the Lin 1 dither on if you're in Cubase 12 or the UV22 in earlier versions. But try it out and see if you notice a difference as well. Okay, so I just see a question is directed to RZ Kills, but from the Tooster, can we use multiple sound cards with Cubase onboard tools? So generally what you want to do is to have, some audio drivers will allow multiple interfaces to be used, but generally USB audio interfaces for some reason can't be stacked. And the problem gets to be is, Cubase wants to send and transmit data, at the sample resolution. That could be, 1/192,000th of a second or 384,000th of a second if you're using Nuendo. And if other devices, if they don't have a way of synchronizing over USB the sample accuracy, then, the systems will tend to drift and go out of sync. So that's why I generally use one audio interface. See, Gareth just saying chord track is great to play around with ideas, even for musically literate. So, even musically literate people run into habits. See, Gareth is working in DaVinci Resolve and not Cubase tonight. So we just see another thing on multiple interfaces. It says, and it's from RZ Kills. So when I asked Cubase support if it's possible to use more than one interface at a time, it was said it was only possible to use one. There's systems like Dante where you could have multiple different devices connected from different companies. But again, it's the critical thing is the clocking and make sure because having multiple interfaces, if they just kind of drift out of time, doesn't do you much good. All right, so we see Gareth saying Greg plus Pabs for Pablo equals Rhythm Elysium. So, all right, so we just see question: what version of Cubase? So we're running Cubase 12 Pro. So. All right, so we see a question. Is there any way to control Cubase remotely? So there is an app that Steinberg makes called Cubase IC Pro. And you could run that on iPad or iPhone and be able to remotely control Cubase. There's a lot of other solutions for remote control of Cubase as well. So a lot of people are using... there's like Touch OSC and other solutions like that people can make up stuff or, can make up their kind of old, entire control surface to drive Cubase. So there's lots of different ways, but you can always check out the Cubase IC Pro. All right, so we have a question. Have an M Audio Pro 61 can't get transport buttons such as play to record show up when setting up MIDI remote device. Nothing happens when I click those buttons in that section. Any ideas? So it's probably that if you had that working in another method with generic remote or Mackie control, and you have these configured for your M Audio Pro 61 interface, that those are kind of allocated already. So make sure that you're, in the, different remote systems that we have, that you don't have that controller defined. So sometimes it might have been like a script you did once and it did control. So if it's doing control here, it could be blocking it from the MIDI remote here. So make sure that you have that. And then once you have that kind of free, and you could also, very easily just kind of test and see if it's transmitting, MIDI directly there. But it's probably that the transport controls are already configured in a generic remote or like a Mackie control mode, and that they're kind of being blocked from that. All right. So we see from Whistling Simon, John Dundas. Apparently, if you're rating something in one part of Cubase, i.e., Groove Agent may not show up as rated in another media bay. Is it possible to have just one rating system? So I think that this might have changed because we just tried this on a live stream last week. So let's say if I come to Groove Agent, and let me just open up the instrument editor, and I will go to load kit. All right. Okay, so let's say I want to go to Aberdeen. So I'm going to give that 5 stars in Groove Agent. Okay. So let me go to Media Bay. And let's go to VST Sound. All right, so it looks like Groove Agent. Let me see if I come here, make sure we go to load kit. Okay. Sorry, wrong. So that one's not carrying over, but when I went to some of the other ones, and I'll mention that, but like if I went to Retrolog, and let's say I switch absolutely 80s to 1 star. And then let's go to Media Bay. All right, so let's say Retrolog. The absolute 80s carries over, but it doesn't look like Groove Agent does, but some of the other instruments I checked Pad Shop and Retrolog, but I'll check on Groove Agent. I'll pass that along. So we see from Captain Energy Music says Cubase, what, you can create tabs in Cubase? That is awesome. So yeah, I think that was in Cubase Score for Atari in 1994. So Michael Michaelius. All right, we see Michael Teens has to take off for his studio date in Dallas. All right, so we see a question. Any news on Halion 7? So none that I could share. So generally, I can't really communicate about stuff before it's released until it's publicly announced. So. So we have a question for streaming a session to a client. Do I need VST Connect Pro, or can I send someone the credentials and they could enter through the Performer program, Studio Pass example? So Yeah, they could just get the actual through the VST Connect Performer, and then you could just send the stream to them, and they could listen to it. All right. So we see a question. Is it possible to edit multiple MIDI CC and from multiple tracks at the same time? So I think let's go ahead and give it a shot. Okay, so let's say so if you want to see multiple CC, just click here and we could see that. All right, so let me just select both events. All right, so if we wanted to, so it looks like, so if we wanted to edit multiple CC, looks like we can edit them so we could see them, but they're going to be edited separately. Let me just try. Yeah, so we can edit one at a time, and then if we wanted to switch between our different takes, we could just come here and see the different takes. So when we so at this point, let's say this one we want to move. So we can kind of toggle back and forth between them, but not necessarily edit the MIDI CCs kind of at the same time. So whatever is selected, then you could see the MIDI CC. All right, so we see, how about a Cubase theme editor with UI that's straight up fire? So, you could do a lot of different elements, but when you come to go into your preferences, check out the user interface, and you could go to different color schemes for different components that you want. You could also, just different default track color types, so if you want the backgrounds or the editor backgrounds to be different, you could change that. So explore all of those options. All right, my chat just jumped on me, so. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Could you show a little bit how you would use the arranger track? Okay, so So a lot of times we have like, people doing jingles is kind of a classic thing where they have multiple versions of the same particular project, but different time formats, maybe a 5-second, 15-second, 30-second, 60-second spot. So what the arranger track is going to allow us to do is to actually, so once we add an arranger track, we'll see it here. And I could, at this point, just say, I like, this is our intro or a guitar solo. And this is going to be a section within the guitar solo. And these could be labeled. And if we wanted to just come over here, alt double click, we could say, okay, solo. And so we could define all of our different sections and pieces of our song. And if we wanted to try different arrangements, we could put these into different play orders. So we could come over here and let's just activate the arranger track. And what I could do is just say, okay, I want it to play here. And instead of just playing straight linearly across, I could hit play. And what it's going to do, when it gets to the end, instead of going straight to here, so we could just try out these different ideas. So if I said, instead of having to physically move all the parts, and I realize it's a first world problem. But now what we're able to do is just to try out different arrangement ideas that you maybe wouldn't explore, for fear of, this note is hanging over. I don't want to mess up the original, so, and at this point, if I wanted to turn this into a linear arrangement, all we would need to do is, let's say, as we go to activate it, is choose flatten chain. And at that point, so I'll just choose no, and it'll now just automatically create a linear arrangement and copy all the parts out manually. All right, so I know we had some questions that were sent in. Let me get to those before it gets too late. Thank you for all the wonderful questions from everyone. Hope that everyone has learned some tips and tricks. All right, and we had this from the last live stream, and I was having a brain cramp. So it says, how to start a VST Connect session without using a MySteinberg account. All right, so let me just come over here, jump back, go to a different project here. Okay, so when we want to do this, we'll go to our VST Connect. And the little secret to do this, let's say we're going to create a VST Connect Pro. Okay, and we could log in through your MySteinberg credentials here and look for people. But if you wanted to give someone just almost like a passcode, click on this little button here and then click on share. And then this will be the key. And the VST Connect performer could just enter this particular key. So once again, you'll see this little icon. And we could toggle between the MySteinberg and the ID login view. Once you've done that, then click on the share icon, and then you'll see the login key that you could pass on to the performer. So if they don't have a MySteinberg account, that's how they could do it. Okay, so another question mailed in. Why is it when I placed a cursor on random places in a project and open an audio event to sample editor, it won't show the WAV file where the cursor are until I press the start button. Then it immediately shows the correct location. This never happens in MIDI events where it shows the correct location directly. I don't recognize this in previous versions of Cubase. Yes, it's a minor problem, but when you do a lot of mixing with narrow corrections, as in dubbing, it can get quite annoying to press play and then look everywhere. So let's say if I'm in a particular editor, I guess the question is that they want to be able to, let's say I have a track selected so that as the cursor moves, that the particular event is reflected in the sample editor. So this could be contingent upon a preference. So let's go to editing, and then we'll see auto select events under cursor. So I'm going to check that, hit apply and OK. So I'm going to go to the selected track, and as I move the cursor to different events, we can see that now it's automatically updated in the particular sample editor based on where the cursor is right there. So again, go to preferences, to editing, and enable auto select events under cursor. Okay. All right. Says, hello, Greg. I have a question for you. If I create a mono audio channel, insert a tone generator, 1K at minus 18 dB, and put a VU meter, I see 0 dB. So far, so good. Now I insert a VU meter in the control room and see minus 2, sometimes minus 3 dB. Nothing else. This is why with the faders all at Unity. Shouldn't I see 0 dB analog from the VU meter? Also the meter, but the faders do not reflect the minus 18 dB either. My VU meter is calibrated minus 18 dB digital equals 0 dB analog. Thanks for always answering the questions. All right. So let's say I wanted to add an audio track. And I'm just going to put, we'll make it a mono source here. Okay, and on this source, I'll take I'm going to put a test tone generator on it. Okay, so we look at the mix console here. We see that we're at minus 12 dB, and I have this, let's say, just attenuated down. So I'm going to go to my meter here. So let's say I'm going to add the supervision plugin, and we'll switch this to our signal to VU meter. All right, so you see minus 12 there. I'm going to copy this to the stereo output. And let's open it up. And I think that this, let me just, sorry. Okay, so see this, I'm going to copy this plugin settings to the master. And this could be, if we see, okay, I'll just, all right, let me just see if this is routed out to the master bus. All right, so let's try it in the VU, in the inserts here. I'm just going to get rid of some of the monitors here. I'll just do this on a brand new project with no routing on it. Sorry about that. Let's just, Right, so we'll come to our test generator. Okay, so let's say we do -12 and just get rid of some of these. I'm just gonna put this on. So you see -12 there, -12 in. And -12 in the headphones, and -12 in the control room. So everything seems to be consistent here. So it seems like that is all metering correctly. Okay, so we have a question. Can I move the attributes in the media bay to be exported, i.e. to a text or .csv file, or how do I export back them up? I don't want to lose them if Windows blue screens on me. So all you have to do is come over to, let's say not your web browser, sorry. Let's come to here and say, okay, on the Mac, we're going to go to Library, hold down Alt or Option key, and then go to your Preferences. And then you'll see in the preferences a file called MediaBay3.db. And that will be the file that will archive all of your media bay. And if you're doing this on Windows, you could think if we go to preview here, we could just say you could access it from the Windows menu. Go to your Steinberg Cubase group and you'd see user settings data folder. So just back up the MediaBay 3.db file and you should be all set. Okay, so we see a question on scale recommendations. Are these, and this is within the key editor, says, are these ordered by best fit, i.e. the key at the top is the nearest fit. So, and this is often going to be when using, let's say, I'll activate this. So let's say we're in a key editor here. And we go into our scale assistant. And then once we are here, let's say, okay, we're going to use the editor scale. And then, you know, we could choose between different ones. So I think that the top is going to be the more conventional choice between, and then the other ones are still kind of working, but may not be the most obvious. So, you know, if you were doing something modally, you know, that's when it would carry, but it would kind of tend to give you like a major or minor key first. So I think that those are the most conventional interpretations of this scale that's utilized in the event. And other ones like, you know, if we, you know, like a C major and A minor could be the same thing. It's a relative minor, or you could say it's E Phrygian, So, but it'll give you the most obvious selection first. All right, so we have a question. What is the best way to create a template for score settings that I can apply? I ask as this looks like it's stored across multiple files, staff layout settings, template. So anytime that you have, if you're doing like a scoring template just to start with, you may want to have like a negative measure or two. And sometimes what people will do is just to create a kind of a dummy event before the project starts, so that all of the score settings that you have. So if I would say, okay, I want this to be set for, grand staff. I want it to be, to be this particular type of quantizing for, visual quantizing, and I want these interpretive flags to be enabled, that then you could save a template just with little blank parts that contain all that data, because that data is contained within the event itself. Okay, so we have a question. What is the best method to move VST3 instrument presets between installs, i.e. from my home to studio machines, and can I rename the folders as long as the files are in the same path? So probably I would choose to not rename the folders, but an easy way to do this is just go to your media bay, and then if it's, we could see kind of your VST sounds here, but if it's going to be like user content, at this point you could go to your VST3 presets, and you could say, okay, I'm looking for, a retro log. And at this point, you could just right click and it will say reveal in Finder or reveal in Explorer. And at that point, here is the folder structure, and you could copy these particular folders, so say, okay, I'm just here at this point, I wanted my VST3 presets, reveal in Finder, and then I can see all my plugin presets, and I could copy that folder to any other computer very easily. Okay, so a question. I'm trying to find a script for the Panorama T4 for Cubase Pro 12, or I need to know which controls on the T4 are mappable to the MIDI remote manager. For some reason, I'm having trouble mapping the transport controls. Any help would be appreciated. So as we mentioned before, the transport controls, make sure that they're not, as long as it's transmitting MIDI, Cubase can accept it for the MIDI remote, but there's a good chance if you have the transport controls working on either generic remote or Mackie control, that those functions may be blocked, as we discussed a little earlier, from being able to be utilized in the actual MIDI remote script if it's already defined for transport control somewhere else. All right, with that, we are out of time. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And we do this every Tuesday and Friday starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And if you have questions you want to send in advance, please send it to Club Cubase at steinberg.de. And we look forward to seeing everyone on Friday. It's great to see so many new faces. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy. Take care.